Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So I have a ton of new details which dropped in the last 24 hours regarding the investigation into Matt Gaetz. If true, he is absolute filth and a moron of epic proportions. So here's the deal. As you may recall from my recent show, Gaetz's friend Joel Greenberg is awaiting trial for about 36 charges, one of which is sex trafficking of a minor. Well, according to 4 people who are said to be familiar with his case, the girl that he allegedly trafficked is the same 17-year-old connected to the Gaetz investigation. And authorities have investigated whether or not other men connected to Gaetz and Greenberg may have had sex with her as well, or I should say have had sex with her. It hasn't been proven yet. We don't know for sure, but it is being investigated. In addition, 3 other people with knowledge of the investigation say that prosecutors believe that Greenberg contacted and met various women through sugar daddy websites such as Seeking Arrangements. So these are websites where women sign up and these women agree to go on dates in exchange for money, gifts, travel, what have you, jewelry, other things of value. Not every woman, I'm sure, on these sites are having sex with these men, but let's just keep it real. That's what these men are after. So according to these 3 people, Greenberg introduced these women to Gaetz, and Gaetz had sex with them. That's what these sources are saying. They also allege that one of the women who had sex with both Gaetz and Greenberg also agreed to have sex with one of their associates. Now, this 3rd man is not identified. They only say that he's someone involved in Florida Republican politics. These beliefs and allegations appear to be backed up, unfortunately for them, with written evidence because the New York Times gained access to receipts, and they were Cash App and Apple Pay receipts showing payments to one of these women. And the payments came from Gaetz and Greenberg. Greenberg also made a payment to a second woman through one of these payment apps or payment services. And they also allegedly made cash withdrawals in the hotel lobbies where these encounters took place. So both Gaetz and Greenberg. In addition, 2 people have confirmed that these women told their friends that the payments came from Gaetz and Greenberg and that the payments were for sex. The Times also verified through messages and interviews that the men met with these women in 2019 and 2020, and that the women were instructed to meet them most often at hotels in Florida. The men would specify a time and a place, and then they'd tell them how much money they were willing to pay. 2 people who are familiar with these meetings also said that some of the men and women involved would take the drug ecstasy prior to having sex, and that includes Gaetz. Gaetz is also said to have asked these women to help find others who might be interested in sex with him and his friends, and the women were told that if anyone asked about their relationships, the women were instructed to say that Gaetz paid for hotel rooms and dinners as part of their dates. Now, here's how prosecutors became aware of the relationship between Gaetz and Greenberg and why it made them suspicious. Greenberg, back in 2018, made a strange visit to his county tax office at night and on the weekend. This was in April of 2018, and while he was in there, you can see on surveillance camera footage, or I guess at the time you could, which was kind of grainy, so you couldn't make out the faces, but both men were seen on the surveillance camera footage. But Greenberg forgot to reset the alarm when they left the office. So when the assistant branch manager came into work on Monday, she was concerned because the alarm wasn't on. So she sent him a text, which she still has, and she gave it to the officials. And the text asked him, "Were you in the office over the weekend?" Greenberg replied, and he admitted that, yeah, I was there. And he said, quote, showing Congressman Gaetz what our operation looked like. Now, remember, Greenberg was doing some shady stuff in that office. He was stealing IDs and creating fake IDs for himself and allegedly for some of these girls and women. And so what exactly did he want to show Gaetz? The Daily Beast obtained additional text messages, and apparently Greenberg had sent a text to an employee on a Sunday asking her to basically flout the law, to skirt standard protocol, and create a duplicate ID for Gaetz. So the message reads, quote, Amy, is there any way to assist one of our congressmen in getting an emergency replacement ID or DL by Tuesday, 2 p.m.? His was lost yesterday and he's got a flight Tuesday. Doesn't have any other form of ID currently on him. Sorry to bother you on Sunday. He then told her that this was in fact being done for, quote, Matthew Lewis Gaetz II, with a date of birth that matches Gaetz, May 7th, 1982. So on top of all of this, because this isn't it, investigators are purportedly looking into whether Gaetz may have used campaign funds for any of these activities. And in a meeting last year, federal investigators are said to have reviewed information that may, quote, connect Gaetz to a fake ID scheme at the center of the case against Greenberg. Also, another allegation has just resurfaced, which originally came up last year in 2020, when a state rep named Chris Letvala, I'm not sure, I think it's Letvala, he got into a Twitter feud with Gaetz because Gaetz condemned him for meeting with Reverend Al Sharpton. Letvala then tweeted to Gaetz and said, quote, and you created a game where members of the Florida House got points for sleeping with aides, interns, lobbyists, and married legislators. Now, Gaetz denied that allegation last year, but several news outlets reported that others confirmed this so-called game and that interns who were thought to be virgins were specifically targeted. Well, now this is bubbled to the surface again, and this disturbing game, they're saying, had a Harry Potter theme. And yes, you heard that right. Harry Potter, the child novel and movie series. And what these people are saying is that these men would get extra points for staying overnight in a sorority or for having sex with a married colleague. So a female Republican, who's only being referred to as an insider, told reporters that she worked with Gaetz in the 2010s, so from 2010 to 2019, and she, quote, heard specific references of Gaetz being involved and scoring points. She also said that approximately 24 male lawmakers participated, as well as a handful of male lobbyists. And the one way, above all else, to win the game, she said, regardless of how many previous points you had scored, was to have sex with a certain conservative woman. Now, this insider refused to name the woman. She didn't want to out her. She wanted to protect her privacy. But the woman was referred to as the snitch, obviously a reference to the Quidditch game in Harry Potter. In addition, she said that this so-called game was the, quote, worst kept secret in Tallahassee because the men who participated in the game bragged about it all the time, and the ones who didn't often lamented that they weren't involved. So it appears that evil Jimmy Neutron could be in a whole hell of a lot of trouble, and they literally have the receipts. Being that he's an attorney, he should have known better, first of all, and he should have been better at hiding all of his illegal activity and all of his skeezy activity. As I mentioned yesterday, he probably felt invincible given his father's previous position and his current wealth and his position as a US congressman. I'm sure he felt a lot safer when Trump was in office too, and when Bill Barr was in charge, although he didn't know that Bill Barr's Justice Department actually was the one who opened up this investigation. So he shouldn't have felt too secure. And I should mention also that a report came out yesterday saying that Gaetz had shown photos and videos of nude women to his colleagues, sometimes on the House floor, and he bragged about having sex with them. So people who saw the images and video said that it was a source of pride for him. And apparently at one time, or at one point, Paul Ryan had to pull him aside and have a talk with him about being more professional. So gross. You know who has to brag about things like that? You know who has to show off photos and brag about sex? Someone who's completely insecure and who has to pay attractive women for sex. That's who. You know, you just have to wonder if any of these women he allegedly paid were also the women in these photos and these videos, because that would be pretty damning evidence. And I bet when he was telling everybody about his conquests and telling them these stories and showing off these photos and videos, I bet he left out the financial transaction part. Doesn't quite make you seem like that much of a man when you're having to pay for it. Sorry, just keeping it real. So, all right, guys, as always, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will absolutely keep you posted on the story. Take care, and I'll talk with you soon.